20,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik-V vaccine have arrived in Bolivia to be administered to frontline health personnel. The European Medicines Agency is expected to approve the AstraZeneca vaccine for use in all EU member nations on Friday. And Lebanese anti-government protesters clashed with security forces for a fourth consecutive day in the northern city of Tripoli this Thursday. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is From the South. This Thursday, Bolivia received the first batch of the Russian Sputnik-V vaccine, which will first be administered to health sector workers in order to protect the lives of those on the front line of the battle against COVID-19. The 20,000 doses of the Russian vaccine arrived from Moscow to Argentina before being transported to Bolivia's El Alto International Airport, where the shipment was officially received by President Luis Arce. The first batch of 20,000 doses of Sputnik-V is part of the 5.2 million purchased by the government to vaccinate the population free of charge against COVID-19. And the third shipment of the Russian Sputnik-V vaccine has arrived in Argentina from Moscow to continue the vaccination process in the country. The flight was carrying 220,000 doses of the vaccine against COVID-19. Government sources also informed of the arrival of some 20,000 doses destined for Bolivia as part of an act of solidarity. The Russian Direct Investment Fund informed that Argentina has a guaranteed supply of the vaccine, while warning that part of the agreed shipments could be delayed by 2 to 3 weeks due to improvements in the distribution strategy for the region. The government of Chile received the first shipment of almost 2 million doses of the Chinese lab Sinovac vaccine against COVID-19. Speaking from the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport, President Sebastián Piñera informed that this first shipment of almost 2 million doses will be implemented by another similar shipment that will arrive in the country on January 31st, with 1.992 million doses of China to help the country contain the spread of the virus. Authorities informed that the vaccination campaign will begin on February 3rd and in the first stage will be directed at medical personnel and senior citizens. The Chilean government reiterated its confidence in the Sinovac vaccine after clinical trials showed 100% efficiency.
According to information provided by the clinical studies of the Catholic University of the Millennium Foundation or the Millennium Institute, the Ministry of Health established that the Sinovac vaccine is safe and effective for people over 60 years old. And as a result of all these facts, the availability of the vaccine, the approval by the ISP and the decision of the Ministry of Health allow us to start next week, probably on Wednesday, after having the certificates that prove the safety of the vaccine. We will be able to start a massive vaccination process in all the regions of the country. For us, as the President said, it is an exciting day, but it is also a day that opens a light of hope for our compatriots, millions of Chileans. We have to consider that this is a staged vaccination. We have committed that this first stage will be carried out until the end of March, and the second important stage by the end of June. And we want the vaccination to be as orderly as possible. That is why we are going to publish the calendar in relation to the risk groups that should be vaccinated, and also to thank the collaboration of our majors, of the primary attention, and of our national immunization program.
Ecuador's National Electoral Council will allow until Thursday morning hours polls and forecasts for the presidential elections of next February 7th under penalty of receiving pre-established fines. This is defined in Article 283 of the new regulations approved by the National Electoral Council of Ecuador, which establishes that 10 days prior to elections, polls and electoral forecasts must cease. The electoral body established a sanction of between 50 and 250 minimum wages if the results of the polls or others are disseminated by any means. According to official data of the 13,099,150 people eligible to vote, there is an average of between 30 and 60% of undecided voters. The National Commission for Dialogue, Peace and Reconciliation of Venezuela's National Assembly held a meeting with the Federation of Chambers and the Associations of Trade and Production in order to move forward with an agenda of dialogue, reconciliation, and agreements that will clear the way for full development and national reconciliation with social justice. The commission, headed by the president of the legislative body, Jorge Rodriguez, once the meeting was over, said both parties made proposals which could be used to move forward in favor of the common good. The president of Fedecamaras, Ricardo Cusano, pointed out that the organization is fully willing to work to achieve a national reconciliation, supporting peaceful dialogues as the only way to achieve the objectives of the national development and prosperity. Both parties agreed to continue to work together, for which purpose a mechanism for permanent contact between the two organizations was established.
We believe that the people of Venezuela are waiting for us to understand each other, to reach agreements in spite of our differences, and not to be afraid to express the political, social, economic, cultural, religious, and ethnic differences we may have, because that does not harm anyone. That we recognize ourselves as different, but even from our differences, we can agree on things for the good of the people and for the good of the country.
A draft recommendation from Germany's Vaccination Advisory Committee calls for offering the AstraZeneca vaccine only to people aged 18 to 64. The European Medicines Agency is expected to approve the AstraZeneca vaccine for use in the 27-nation European Union on Friday.
The decision will only be made tomorrow. Nevertheless, we have known since the autumn, as this debate has been going on for several months now, that with AstraZeneca there are fewer data points from studies with older age groups. This is not about bad data, but just little of it, and so it was to be expected that this would influence the decision of the regulatory authorities and also the Permanent Vaccine Commission. We just don't know yet how it will influence the decision in concrete terms, and that is why we are now waiting for the approval decision tomorrow, and then the final recommendation of the
French Health Minister Olivier Véran said on Thursday that the government was considering stronger measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 amid new and more contagious variants of the coronavirus.
We
are not, strictly speaking, in an epidemic wave. A wave is when the virus is spreading exponentially, like during last spring, and sweeps away everything in its path. But the virus circulates at a high level, and it is spreading quicker every week. The fact that these variants are propagating in our country makes us think that the curfew and all the control measures in place in our country are certainly useful, but probably not enough. What we want to avoid is an epidemic within an epidemic, which is not really visible yet in France, but which everything makes us think that it will become a very quick and very strong reality if we do nothing. I consider these variants a bit like new viruses, requiring new measures to protect ourselves.
This month's coronavirus surge in Portugal has stretched medical services to breaking point. According to population size, Portugal has been the worst hit in the country in the world for more than a week in terms of new daily COVID-19 cases and deaths, as shown in data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. The country is now facing an alarming problem. As soon as new hospital beds become available, they are quickly filled and more are needed. And while extra beds and new wards are relatively quick to produce, the necessary trained medical staff aren't. Experts predict the surge will peak in mid-February, raising the possibility of a total collapse of the health system. The Portuguese government is turning to other European Union countries for help. Germany sent a team of 2 doctors and a medevac specialist to Lisbon on a reconnaissance mission this Thursday.
In this situation, we need to expand, to create more room. We need to acquire equipment and create conditions to have physically and structurally more patients in intensive care. That is on one side. The human resources factor is finite, not endless. And that is the most critical situation, and where naturally we are worried that it can become a situation of complete collapse.
Moving on, U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday included a scrapping of ban of U.S. funding for abortion counseling provided by international organizations and ordering a review of rules under Donald Trump's administration that blocked government-funded family planned clinics in the United States from referring women for abortions. Biden also signed an order extending health care access.
But today I'm about to sign 2 executive orders, and basically the best way to describe them, to undo the damage Trump has done. There's nothing new that we're doing here other than restoring the Affordable Care Act and restoring the Medicaid to the way it was before Trump became president, which by fiat he changed and made more inaccessible, more expensive, and more difficult for people to qualify for either of those 2 items, the Affordable Care Act or Medicaid.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio stressed the need to be transparent about the COVID-19 death toll following the release of a report by the New York State Attorney General that showed fatalities in the state's nursing homes may have been undercounted by as much as 50%.
These are our loved ones we lost. It's someone's grandma, it's someone's mother or father, aunt or uncle. I mean, this is families missing someone dear to them. And, for so many people, and I talk to them, the fact that I've talked to people all over the city who have lost folks and they could not be with them, it made it so much more horrible. So this was among all the other pain that we went through in 2020, this was arguably the very worst part of it. We have to make sense of this. We have to get the full truth, and we have to make sure it never, ever happens again. Nothing like this happens again. And we have to be honest about the numbers. I do want to give a lot of credit to colleagues in my administration, our health leadership. They have always strived to really put out not just the obvious numbers, but we've been talking about probable deaths and probable cases. I mean, we try to be as clear and honest as possible, and I appreciate that. And I think that's the way we all have to understand this crisis and make sure nothing like it happens again.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed on Thursday that the COVID-19 virus had set off a global crisis that is still unfolding. Guterres was speaking in New York to outline UN priorities during the pandemic. He also noted that, quote, "This must be the year when we put our world back on track towards peace, stability, and opportunity for all, because it is clear that we have lost our way." The UN chief called for an increase in vaccine production and warned that a global immunity gap puts everyone at risk. Guterres said his message for 2021 is one of hope and determination, as he believes it is possible to put the world back on the right track, and we must all do everything we can to make it happen.
This must be the year when we put our world back on track towards peace, stability, and opportunity for all, because it is clear that we have lost our way. Those whose life chances were already reduced by inequality and injustice based on income, race, gender, and other forms of discrimination are suffering most from the impact of COVID-19.
Lebanese anti-government protesters clashed with security forces for a 4th consecutive day in the northern city of Tripoli this Thursday. Lebanese security forces fired volleys of tear gas at rock-throwing youth amid outrage over the death of a 30-year-old protester after violent clashes with security forces on Wednesday. The scale of the protests in Tripoli appears to be growing even as the nation grapples with both the pandemic and the worst economic crisis in Lebanon's history. More than 220 people were injured in the clashes as frustrations boiled over amid strict coronavirus lockdown measures.
The soldiers shot at Omar Taiba using live ammunition. "We want to eat. Feed us and give us to drink, and we will come out of the streets. We are not against the security forces, nor the soldiers, as they are our brothers, cousin, friend, the friend of a friend, or the friend of a cousin. They are pushing us to clash with the military, while they are our brothers. The corrupt and the leaders are sitting in their homes, smoking a cigarette and laughing at the soldiers and civilians who are clashing with one another. I address the military chief and I tell him that he is everyone's guardian.
Yemen's popular Houthi movement has stressed that the United States' move to suspend arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates will not eliminate the crimes committed by the three countries. The president of the Revolutionary Committee of Yemen, Mohammed Ali al-Sadhouthi, emphasized that such a measure will not erase the crimes committed by Saudi Arabia and its allies against the poorest country in the Arab world after the war they launched against it in March 2015. He further noted that the freeze on arms sales is not a deterrent and will not absolve responsibility for the killings, destruction, famine, and terrorism conducted by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates against Yemen. Former rebel leader of the Central African Republic, Mohamed Said Abel Khani, accused of war crimes, appeared for the first time before the International Criminal Court this Thursday. The former rebel leader was arrested in the Bria region and handed over to the court on January 24th by officials of the Central African Republic. He faces charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity allegedly committed in the town of Bangui in 2013, including torture, forced disappearance, and persecution. The judge used Thursday's session to verify Khani's identity and the language he would prefer to use in the following sessions. This is the first time that a former member of the Seleka militia group has been brought before a national or international court for war crimes. The World Health Organization announced in an online press conference that Africa can expect to see at least 30% of its population immunized against COVID-19 by the end of 2021.
And the objective is to reach 20% at least, to cover 20% of the population by the end of the year. And I might say that with the latest development within the COVAX facility, there is a very, very good prospect that this objective to supply up to 600 million doses by the end of 2021 will definitely be reached. So realistically, we could expect around another 10, 15, or 20%, 10 to 15% that could be covered. So globally, reaching 30, 35% could be a realistic assumption by the end of 2021. I think we all agree that the current situation of supply chain have not facilitated things on the region. But with the latest announcement that was made through the COVAX facility, we are really hoping that the first dose is going to be started to roll out in Africa, probably by mid next month. And by March, we will definitely see most of the countries starting vaccinating.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says more locally made coronavirus vaccines will be supplied to other countries as he hails the vast nation's fight against the infectious disease as successful.
In a country where 18% of the world's population lives, we averted a major tragedy by effectively controlling the coronavirus. We saved mankind from a big disaster by saving our citizens from the pandemic. In just 12 days, India has vaccinated more than 2.3 million healthcare workers. In the coming months, we will achieve our target of vaccinating 300 million elderly people and people with comorbidities.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.